Today we'll talk about the game Outpost Gamma from Dwarfstar Games. It's a box game, nice components. Dwarfstar has some innovative games, nice art. This is from 1981 from Dwarfstar Games. The ruggedness of the boxes aren't a real strong suit. They're kind of thin cardboard, so they don't, as you can tell, they don't hold up super well over almost 30 years. Here's a little bit of theme on the back. Outpost Gamma, 10 troopers against hundreds. On a colonial world of the far future, 10 hard-pressed Imperial troopers in mobile battle armor desperately defend their base against mass assaults by hundreds of primitive alien natives, rushing to attack under the cover of violent energy storms. The Imperial troopers have the latest in advanced technology, high mobility pulsar units in their armor, and the support of 2 heavy weapons specialists. But the native Erdans have sheer numbers, unwavering courage, and their greatest ally, the hostile environment of their home planet. Will sophisticated technology be enough to save the beleaguered garrison at Outpost Gamma? It's a 2-player game. It can easily be played solitaire as well, if you just kind of change your frame of reference. There's the natives, the Imperial forces that are basically colonizing the planet, and there's miners as well, which are the Imperial forces support the miners. There's storms that go around. For the box, to give you a sense of scale, it's like 7.5 inches by 4.5, like an inch and a half thick. As far as the components then, there's the rule book. It's actually 24 pages. The last page, I took this off, comes off, and it's a terrain effects chart and also combat results table and effective storm. So it's a reference sheet that you can have sitting while you're doing the game. The map is shown here. It's one piece that's folded out into these 6 folded sections. A plexiglass for general play. But the thickness of it is cardboard, and the thickness of the cardboard is about the thickness of the counters. The big part of this game is different terrain effects, and here's the map of the different terrains. Clear areas, ridges, canals, aquifers to the canals, craters, vapor pools, kind of cliff edges, and then rises between different terrains and the tops of mesas. But the end effect is the map. They try to make it realistic, which is really nice. And I think it's a nice map. It's got interesting, color scheme. It's got a record track. I like that it's cardboard. Like I said, it's kind of in between a capsule game, which a capsule game would have a paper map, and here's a cardboard, but it's not as big, of course, as a full-size game. It's, like 14 inches by 14 inches or so. And it comes with dice, which is nice little dice. And the last components are the counters. So this is the Erden rebels, the rebel shooters that can fire ranged weapons, and the leaders. They don't have any combat ability, but they increase the ability of the others if they're in the area of the others. And these are the Imperial forces. These are the Legionnaire troopers, heavy weaponeers, and Legionnaire commanders. These are miners on the planet. These are disruptions, which are related to their weapons of the Imperial forces. These are basically markers that show fortified positions. These are improved positions with more defensive fortifications. These are improved, and then these are the fortified, which has higher defensive capability than these. These are energy storms that move around on the planet with different strengths. The one indicates that it affects area 1 hex in diameter around. The 2 storm has a effect of 2 hex around, so they're more powerful storms. Game turn marker. These are optic sights that can be used by the forces in combat. There's the unified identification number and attack strength, defensive strength, and movement allowance. And different terrains require you to use different amounts of movement. And then this is the range, so these are the distance that they can fire. Legionnaire leaders, Legionnaire heavy, Legionnaire troopers, so you can see their different levels there. And then the Erden rebels, which they have 0 range, which means they can only combat in the hex they're in. And the shooters, which have a range of 3. And the leaders don't have combat ability, but they have movement. And then the miners also have different abilities, although they're not as strong as either rebel shooters or the Legionnaire troopers. The player's aid terrain effect, which shows the custom move to different types of terrain for Erdens and Imperial. And you look at basically the differential, which I'll talk about in the rules, as far as the combat differentials of the attacking and defensive unit, roll dice, and then they're either stunned or killed. Storms, which can appear and then move on the board. That's components. Components are very nice. I'm very, very pleased with the components. The object, one controls the rebel forces, the other controls the Imperial Legionnaires. Disruption fire are non-lethal weapons used by Legionnaires to stun the rebels, and these are what indicates disruptions. First scenario is the last outpost. Put all the Legionnaires on the board with their various fortified defenses, and they are making a stand at the outpost to defeat the Erden rebels. And this is the scenario I'll go through. You start with Legionnaires on the board, there's no Erden rebels, and then each turn they start coming in on the edge of the board. So that should be interesting. It goes 12 turns. And the second scenario is the evacuation. And in this scenario, the Legionnaires are trying to get the miners off the planet. So a starting placement for this is there's no Legionnaires and miners on the board. They'll be coming through the area that's controlled by the Erdens as they try to evacuate. You set up the Erden rebels, and then game turn 1, the Legionnaires move in and they try to exit. They come in the north edge of the board and they try to make it all the way to the south edge. The Erdens in turn 6 to get more reinforcements. It goes 15 turns. So those are the two scenarios. So in the sequence of play is you do the energy storm phase, disruption fire phase, Erden movement phase, Erden combat phase, Erden stun recovery phase, Imperial minor movement phase, Imperial minor combat phase, remove disruption markers, Imperial Legionnaire stun recovery phase. And then you end the game turn and advance it. The energy storms shown here, there's two types. One is there's a less severe and a more severe. The less severe affects a diameter of 1 hex around it. Here, a more severe affects a diameter of 2 hexes around it. So to see if a storm appears, and the locations, so it indicates if a storm will appear, and at what location. There's 3 different locations. Storm locations 1, 2, and 3. And then for all storms on the map, you roll a die, and then you consult the storm direction magnitude table, and it tells you the direction and the number of hexes. And there is a compass indicating marker here to show you the directions. The effects of the storm. So energy storm prevents all units, Imperial and Erden and miners, from firing into, through, or from any storm hex. So that'll block your line of sight. With the exception of optic sighting, which I'll talk about what optic sighting is. Legionnaire and miner units within the storm attack and defend in close combat at half their normal strength. Erden units in the storm attack and defend at normal strength. Disruption fire is unaffected by the storm. The idea being that the electrical storms are affecting the technology that the Imperial and miners have, but it doesn't affect the Erdens. All movement costs double for Legionnaire units when moving in energy storm hexes. Erden miner movement is unaffected. So disruption fire. Disruption fire may stun any or all units in the hex or the marker plus any units that may enter the hex. Disruption markers can only be placed by Imperial Legionnaire units. They can only be placed by the heavy units, which are these. No line of fire is needed for disruption marker. So they're kind of like mines. And then they have the corresponding results in the combat table. So the movement is dependent on the terrain. You said there's vapor pools, craters, canals, canal spurs, mesa tops, ridges and inclines and clear areas. And the terrain effect summary, which is at the end of the rules, but I took it out, shows you for the Imperial and Erden how much it costs to move in each hex, and also it shows the effect on combat, like if you're firing on units in there, and in some cases when you're firing from there, what the effect is. Any terrain keys right there on the edge of the board. So there's two types of combat. There's ranged combat and close combat, and they use the combat table. There can be several units that are attacking a given unit, and you would sum their attack strength and then compare that to the defense strength. You subtract the defense strength from the summed attack strength to figure out the combat differential. And then you also do modifiers on that based on the terrain. You roll 6 dice, and then you either stun or kill. If you stun, you can flip them over, and if you kill, you just take them off the board. Another option for stunning is having them normally facing upright and then just rotate 180 degrees. I think that's how I'll do it. It's a little bit, that way you don't lose track of what's what. You need line of fire, and there can be blocking terrain. Like if you're on top of a mesa, it can be difficult to see, for instance, if you're firing towards the top of the mesa. So in close combat, a similar approach as for ranged combat. When you do close combat, when you do your modifiers, it indicates if the cases are for close combat, how it may have an effect. Improved and fortified positions. So the effect is if you use an improved position, the combat attacks are reduced by 1, so it's like a -1 effect because the defense is better. If it's a fortified, it's reduced by -2, so since your defense is better, which makes sense. And then there's this optic sighting. There's 2 of these, which are high-resolution optical equipment that the Imperial, the Legionnaires have. They may be placed no more than 6 hexes from the commander unit, and there must be a unblocked line of fire. The effect of that is that the Legionnaire player may inspect the identity of all Erden units in the hex at any time during the combat phase. And then Erden leaders, they had a +1 to the die roll for close combat if a unit is stacked or adjacent to an Erden leader. I'll set up the scenario 1, which is the last outpost, which is shown here. So first of all, the starting placement, Legionnaires, all 10 Legionnaires units, up to 4 improved positions and 4 fortified positions can be placed anywhere on the map by the Imperial player. However, all units marked must be at least 3 hexes away from all map edges. Okay. So here's all 10 of the Legionnaires, and here's all 8 of the various fortifications. One of the victory conditions is having mesa top hexes, so I'll put fortifications on those. I basically put them on the edges of them. So those are fortified, those are the strongest ones. And these ones are improved, so then I'll put some down here I'm not sure how this will work, but to kind of see if I can prevent them from coming up there. And then as far as putting units on, these are the regular troopers. I'll put, 1 each down the bottom here, and then put the remainder up here. And I'll put the commander here, and I'll put the heavy weaponeers down here because I think they might be able to use their disruptors. So that's all I'll set up for that. And at the starting, there's no rebels on the board. They'll just be coming in later. And there will be no reinforcements for Legionnaires, so that's all they have. The reinforcements for the Erden Rebels will start in game turn 1. During each Erden movement phase, 10 units may move onto the map anywhere from the south edge, and 10 more from the north edge. So starting on game turn 1 here, what I'll do is I'll do game turn 1, and then I'll show it like an intermediate turn. So first let's do the Energy Storm phase. 4. No storm. Okay. Disruption Fire. The heavy weaponizers can do 10 hexes. And these can do within 1 hex, so they'll do that. Okay. And then the Erden movement are coming from the top, 10 are coming from the bottom. I'll send mainly the rebels. I'll send a few shooters with them too. So there's 2 shooters and then 8 rebels in each group. So as far as movement, so these guys can move, they have 3, and in a canal they can move 1/2 point to move in a canal, so they can move, we'll do that, they move 6. So then for the Erden movement, I moved them up to the canal since it only costs 1/2 a movement point. And they have a stack limit, so you can only stack 3 unless the leader's on there, so that limited how many I could put all the way up. So the furthest one up was able to go 6, and I also used that same approach with them coming down, so we'll see how that works out. And now the next one is the Erden combat. And the range of so they have 2 that can fire, the others are just 0. They can only do close combat. You add the attack values and then you subtract the defense and then do modifiers. So the total here is 8 obviously, and then they're going after this heavy one, so their defense is 3. But they're also in a reinforced kind of bunker there, and that'll benefit their die roll by 1, so it'll shift it down the table by 1. And then you look for terrain modifiers, and they're shooting from a canal into a clear, so there's no modifiers for that. So we look at the 6 minus 3, which would be, or I'm sorry, 8 minus 3, which is a 5 differential. Roll a 5, but then we reduce it by 1 since they're in a fortified, so it would be a 4. And they either get stunned or killed, and he gets killed. And then up here, none of them are within 3, so there's no firing there. The next phase is the Erden stun recovery phase, where you basically take ones that are damaged and you put them to full recovery. Currently there's stuns, so we'll not do that. Then the Imperial minor movement phase. We're going to keep them right where they're at right now because they're in their fortified areas. And there's no minors, it's just Legionnaires. So then combat phase. So the range on this one is 6. These 3 units can fire. They're going to go after the Erdens with ranged ability, so they're going to go after this one. These 2 will combine fire, so it's 12 minus 2. And there's no combat modifiers here. 12 minus 2 is a kill. Then this one can still fire. He'll go after this one, so it's 6 minus 2. There's a 4 differential. Yeah, it's a kill. So resolves it down there. And then up here, these are in range also. We go 10 against 8 differential. 5, that's a kill. 6 against 2 4 differential. That's also a kill. And then you remove disruption markers. They'll have an effective. A rebel is in the hex and there weren't any, so they're removed. Then we do stun recovery phase. There were none that were stunned, so then we advance the next turn. And now I'll play through it a little bit and we'll pick up about halfway. So I'm picking up at turn 4 here. So now we have a couple of storms coming on the board. And to do that, you see if they appear and what area they appear, and then you figure out their magnitude as they're moving. They're going to be a 1 or 2, and it shows the direction. We have a magnitude 2 and a magnitude 1 coming. So the storm movement's the first step, and then it's the disruption fire phase. And all of them can do within 1 hex, but there's this is the only regular Legionnaire that has any in 1 hex, so he'll put him on here. This is a heavy, he can do it up to 10 out, but he'll put it here. So then to resolve it, it's an immediate combat with a differential of 2. You do that on the units involved to see if they get stunned. That one had no effect. My understanding is that they can only stun, so that one is stunned. Then we'll resolve up here. Nope. No effect. The next step is your Erden movement. And they're a bunch of... So I can only stack 3, but these guys are going to pile on top of this guy. There's one guy, that one already. 2 more are going to pile on that guy. There's one there already, but 2 more are going to pile on this guy. Some more are coming on the board then. They can only do 3 in a hex, so... So they're pretty much swarming. And then combat phase, we'll do close combat here on this unfortunate dude. 11 versus 3, so it's a plus of 8. He got a lucky roll though. And he's on a fortified, so he's a -1 on that, so he's fortunate to only be stunned. To indicate stun, you flip him over. Then this one, it's 9 versus 3, so plus 6, and he's on a fort as well. And another unlucky roll. So he's only stunned also, so they're very fortunate. But since he's stunned, then he can't do combat until he recovers. Then up here, a 9 versus 3, so plus 6. And he gets a -1 on the roll, so it gets him down to 2, but he's still killed. So they get rid of one of them. And this one still has, still can fire. He has a range of 3, so he's going to fire at this stunned one. And if the stunned one gets a second hit, he's killed. Unfortunately, he gets a 1, so he doesn't hit. Stun recovery phase, if any of them are stunned, they recover, but there's none in that situation. Imperial movement phase. They'll just stay where they're at. Combat phase. So the ones that are stunned can't do anything. He's got a range of 3 though, so he'll be firing at that one. And it's 6 versus 4, so it's a plus 2. And there's no modifier. 6, he kills him. He'll fire at that one, so that's 2. Plus 2, 1. Stuns him. Then up here, he'll fire at that one. Nothing. He'll fire. 6 kills him. Remove disruption markers. The stun recovery phase. I'm stunned. For the Imperials. So he's recovered. He's recovered. So that's the situation. And then the other turn. So we looked at Outpost Gamma by Dwarfstar Games. The box, like I said, it's not super robust, but the components are very nice, especially for a smaller game. It's kind of a hybrid between a small game and a full game. The components all look very, very nice, especially for the era. Very happy with that. I really like the board. Neat things about the game are there's a lot of terrain effects, And then also the whole concept of basically a horde coming. Had a few higher tech military personnel to see how that plays out. And it's, you can kind of feel it's good pace to it, because you can kind of see the hordes coming and there's not many there, so will you be successful, or conversely, can the hordes take out the Imperials? And I like the storms. They move around and they can basically take out the technology as they go there. It's a good kind of quick play game, but there's some tactics in there, and it definitely has a good science fiction theme, so I really appreciate that. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Thanks.